Hi friends, today topic I am going to discuss about the security for the static and dynamic SQL statement. And these are like a DB2 internal security mechanism, and these are the concept I am going to cover, like how to execute the privileges, how the thread mechanism work, how for the primary and secondary authorization ID, and what is the current SQL ID, what is the plan, who will be the plan owner for the security mechanism. And this is the basic structure of the general for the security. You can able to see these are like a DB2, and we have like a different types of layers here. And DB2, this is the user data, this is the DB2 catalog, how the DB2 distributed security to the DB2 server here. And these are commands we need to run for the to give the grant privileges to any of the user. We have to give like a grant select means on table name, for which table you are giving, and the table name, this is syntax on table, this is a grant select on table name, this is a table name, employee table, or you can give any whatever the table name. And to the Lisa nothing but the user. These are to provide the grant access to the Lisa user. On the select means the Lisa can be accessed only select access to the table of employee table. Similarly, I want to withdraw the access privileges from the Lisa. This is a command like a revoked select on table name from employee table, or if you had phone number or any history table, then you can give like a table name as a history from Lisa. I am revoking from Lisa. That's why I am giving like a revoke from Lisa. If you are going to give, then you need to give grant to Lisa. Lisa nothing but user here. And how the DB2 security will work for the static SQL statement. We have seen like a static SQL, nothing but like whatever the commands we are running in the through program, that is called a static SQL. And these are like a CSS, and this is a DB2, how the thread mechanism is working, and this is the plan and directory, and this is a catalog. The directory having the plan name, and you can able to see that DB2 only can access the plan name. How the security manager, once the security having given the grant access to the privilege, then only the thread will be connection will happen. We will see some of the point like we are doing like a bind packages, but who will give the bind access to the user? If you are going, I am doing the bind access, binding the package, but who will give the bind access? Generally all user cannot have the privileges to execute the bind package. Someone we need to give grant privileges like this command to execute the grant access to the bind to the user. Then only I can able to execute the bind access to the corresponding package. You can see this is a grant access granted to the user need to execute. Suppose like what will happen for the user X has enter the transaction code on his terminal leading to the execution load model, and in CSS, obviously CS made by the user. At the first SQL statement DB to check whether the X nothing but user has been execute privileges on plan. The load model associated plan in X. If so, the load model plan will be stored and execute. The plan will invoke the necessary package. If you are having the user having X user having the execute privileges on the plan, then only you can able to run the packages. Then once the user has been execute privileges access, then only the thread. See, the thread is created here for the plan and the SQL statement. If he is having access to the run the plan access, then only the plan will be created for the CSS. And subsequently SQL call will be happen. That is for static SQL. But how the privileges will give like if a dynamic SQL for the bind execution. These are like a bind for the dynamic SQL, same like a TSO and DB2 mechanism, DB2, and this is the like directory spoofy plan. We have like one more mechanism called dynamic rule run command. Who is running the program? Generally at the bind of time we don't give like a, we won't check like a privileges to the in the dynamic SQL for the authorization user. Only on the runtime only the access privilege will be checked for the dynamic SQL. And similar like here like a X user login to invoke a spoofy and spoofy program brought into storage and executed and following the TSO command. Here this is a command I am running the program. This is a program name and plan name nothing but spoofy plan name. At the first SQL DB to check whether spoofy plan may be executed by user X user looking into the DB2 catalog. If so, it will load like a spoofy plan into storage and execute, means the spoofy plan here like it is stored in the table and execute the thread that will connected from the spoofy to the DB2. DB2 check the data access privileges to for user. DB2 also choose the optional access to the data. At the next SQL statement, the data access privilege again will be checked. Once it is has been data privilege has been checked, then only the thread will be created. But only the difference between the static and dynamic SQL privilege means for static SQL we will check like the execution privileges at the bind time, but in the dynamic SQL the execution privileges will be checked at the runtime. If we go like these are like a option like a dynamic SQL, and we have seen DB2 dynamic SQL. This is another option. This is like another way to check like a dynamic access privilege to the user. Here I given like a current SQL ID is nothing but Einstein, nothing but user here. Then we can able to see we have seen dynamic rules bind here. Here you can able to see the dynamic rule I am given like a runtime. Then I am only running time will be checked like a dynamic the execution privileges. Here I am giving a dynamic rule inside the bracket bind time. I want to check like a privileges in the bind time. Then plan package owner called like X user. Here the user Einstein log on and invoke the spoofy and spoofy program bought into storage and executed using the TSO command. You can able to see the TSO program spoofy plan. At the first SQL DB to check whether spoofy plan may be executed by Einstein looking into the DB catalog. If so, means if the user is having the access, then it will load the spoofy plan into storage and then the thread will be executed. Once the thread has been executed, the thread has been created and executed, then the first prepared statement can be now executed. What is the prepared statement for the dynamic SQL? Then we can able to see, we will discuss about the more on the prepared statement while discussing other dynamic SQL. And DB to check the data access privilege for X user who is a binder of the spoofy plan, and DB to choose the optional access path to the data. The next execution data access privilege will be checked here. This is generally we have discussed like only for the single user, but how to be given access to for the multiple users, like a multiple authorization ID. This is the logon ID and sign on ID is same, and this is another user ID DB2. It is stored in the user table. During the creation of the type, it is thread like it is possible that you will be having addition to your user logon sign on ID called the primary authentication in DB2 term. Means we are executing logon who is the logon ID nothing but the primary authorization ID receive the additional secondary authorization ID, since each authorization ID can be given privileges by using the grant command. Means if you are giving like a more than one user ID, even the second user ID should be having access by using the to give access by using the grant command only. This will give additional privileges to DB2. The authorized ID program ORT order taking. ORT mean order taking mean for example contain the privileges you need to do the job program application ORT application. See, the association between your primary authorization ID and for additional security authorization ID lies between outside DB2 can be easily changed. It is system admin responsibility to set up DB2 security policy. You don't have to take care of the as a developer. You should not take what is the security mechanism for the secondary user ID. Only the DB2 system admin can take like a access privileges to the secondary user and primary user. And this is the structure of the plan table. Sometimes we have seen like a plan where the plan package will be stored here, and these are the table nothing but the standard defined table. You can browse sysibm dot plan table. You can able to see the who is a package and who is the owner of the package, and you can able to see the table scan, what is the number of the matching columns. You can have all the values we can able to then collection ID, what is the version number of the plan. we can able to see in the plan table. Next, we can able to see like a current SQL ID. It will work only for the dynamic SQL. It will give like a against the special register. These are like syntax for the as the implicit authorized table name while giving current SQL ID. And to check like privileges, we have to give create, grant, and create. Only statements are checked with the composite privileges. These are like some steps. If you write a program in the unqualified SQL, like static SQL, the qualifier will be checked through bind qualifier option. This is a default value. We are going to go over like normally as a programmer. This static SQL means I am giving SQL statement inside the program called static SQL. The qualifier check like a bind qualifier option. But in dynamic SQL, how to check like a bind qualifier by using the current SQL ID will be used for that purpose. In static SQL, when the bind function does the security check, it will verify whether binder can issue the SQL statement mentioned the program. But in dynamic SQL, we have no distance between these two cases. The first case is create and grant we have to create the user and grant the access checked with the privileges granted to the current SQL ID only. Here we have to give dynamic SQL, we have to give option like a current SQL ID. The second case is that all other statements such as a select and that will be checked against with the composite privileges. Nothing but set of all privileges granted to the all authorization ID. More than one user ID it will be executed, then it is called like a composite user ID. And this is like a static SQL, how we are checking like the owner can be having access or not by using bind package or plan owner. This is a default like a bind owner or default bind package means package or the package we have to bind package. This is the option like bind qualifier. Inside the qualifier I given an option like while a binder can be having the user can be having the access privilege to the bind. The other way like we can this is the default while who is executing the program, there is a default value will come. To override we can able to give like a bind owner. This is another option like a bind owner also option is there, like while execution bind instead of bind qualifier we can give like a bind owner. In static SQL all security check will be dying during the bind time against what is the ID called like a package or package owner. And this is the default, it will like a binder of the logon ID means who is executing of the I am currently executing the binding of the program. The default my ID will take like a binding access, but I can able to do override by using the binder owner ID. This is the option. I am suppose your colleague is having the bind access privileges, but you don't have the bind access privileges. At that time you can give like a bind owner, then you can give inside the bracket your colleague ID. At that time his ID will take to execute the privileges. But default this is a bind qualifier means if you are given bind qualifier your ID will take. To override that one we have to give bind owner. And these owners will be used by DB2 or system admin responsibility means the DB will give an access to the who is for this binder privileges. That's all friend for this. This is a small topic on the security, mainly for the binding for the static and dynamic SQL statement. These are like steps we need to take additional steps while executing the binding and running the program. Whether you are able to execute the having access to execute the program or not, this is another way to check like access privileges. That's all. Thank you all.